So in this video I want to help you to get started with Kubernetes. That is, before we are going to set up our course lab environment, I would like to show you how Kubernetes is working in a Google Cloud environment. And I'm using Google Cloud for the very simple reason, not because Google is the only cloud where you can use Kubernetes. Kubernetes can run everywhere, but in the end we have Kubernetes because of Google, so it's my little way of saying thank you Google by demonstrating Kubernetes in Google Cloud. Notice that if you do not have a Google Cloud account yet, just register. As a new customer, you get $300 of free credit in Google Cloud, and that allows you to learn a lot about Kubernetes. I am going to click on console, which will bring us to the Cloud Console. There we go. And in the pane on the left, we are going to have a look at Kubernetes Engine, because Kubernetes Engine, that is what we need. And in Kubernetes Engine, we want to get started with a simple cluster. So I'm clicking clusters. And there we have a create option. So we are going to create a new cluster. It's very easy to set up one of these managed Kubernetes environments. And a managed Kubernetes environment, that is just good enough to get yourself started. So I'm using create. And then it's asking what we want. Well, definitely we want GKE standard. So I'm clicking on configure, and then it is going to load the next page. There we go. Now in this next page, the thing that really you want to do is my first cluster, because you want to learn Kubernetes, right? You don't want to run it into production. If you want to run it into production, here are all the different options that you can select to specify what exactly you want to do. But for this first encounter with Kubernetes, we are going to use my first cluster. Based on your Google account settings, it will automatically select a cluster name and a cluster zone. The cluster zone corresponds to your default zone in Google Cloud, and all the other things, including some more minimal machine types. The entire purpose of that is to make sure you don't spend lots of money on your cluster. Using my first cluster will cost about $4 if you are talking about the US Central region. That is $4 a day. So if you leave it up and running for a month and you need to pay for it yourself, it's something to pay attention anyway. But before we are getting started, I think it's a nice way to learn about Kubernetes. So here we can see that my first cluster settings are applied and it's submitting, and now you need to wait for a little bit. The wait will take about 5 minutes, more or less. Depends a little bit on how busy it is, and honestly I don't know what exactly it depends on. But in about 5 minutes you will have your cloud up and running. You can already see what it is doing. So it has a name for the cluster, my first cluster. The location is US Central, Central 1. Then we have the number of nodes, which is set to 3. The number of nodes is really important for running your applications, because the more nodes you've got, the easier it is to load balance access to your actual application. 3 nodes is a nice minimum. We are going to do it even better later when we are going to install Minikube in a virtual machine. And there you can see the rest is being allocated right now. So for the remainder of it, we just have to wait a little bit. So here we have the cluster up and running, 3 nodes, 3 vCPUs, 5.1 gigabytes. And now we need to be doing something with it. So how are we going to do that? Well, we click on Actions. And in the Actions, there is the Connect option. We first need to connect to the cluster. So there we go. And in order to connect to the cluster, we need to use command line or dashboard. For CKAD, you want to focus on command line, definitely. There is a dashboard, and this dashboard is pretty nice, but really it doesn't get you through all the assignments on CKAD. So I am going to run, I'm going to click this command, the gcloud command, and I'm running it in the Cloud Shell, and that will open a Cloud Shell. as you can see right here. But before we can use the Cloud Shell, we have a virtual machine that actually needs to be deployed. So that can take a little bit of time. It comes with a disk, this Cloud Shell. If you don't want it and if you want it to be faster, you can also enable ephemeral mode. For what we are doing here, ephemeral mode in fact is good enough because we are only going to spend a few minutes here in the Google Cloud environment so that you know what is going on and can discover a little bit. Later in this course, in the next lesson, I will tell you how to set up your own course environment. But you can see that, well, speeding it up a little bit, it's not too dramatic, it's already there. So let's click this away, and there we can see the gcloud command. So in the gcloud command, this is a Google Cloud command. This is not a course about Google Cloud, so I'm just going to press enter here and authorize to ensure that Google Cloud is allowed to do whatever it wants to do. And here I can see that I am in my first cluster 1. I'll tell you all about Kubernetes and what you can do in this Kubernetes environment later, but for now I do want to tell you kubectl is the main Kubernetes command line utility, and kubectl get all will give you an overview of all the resources that exist in Kubernetes at this moment. And you will see that's not very much at the moment, but that's okay. This is a brand new cluster. And in this brand new cluster, we need to start configuring our stuff. That's what we are going to do in the next lessons. But at least at this point, we have something that allows you to get familiar with Kubernetes.